remember how last week we talked a little bit about the homes that some of the California Indians lived in, and we talked about how they didn't always live in teepees, right? They lived in many different types of homes based on what was around them, which leads us right into this idea that we have here today. How have California Indians lived in their environments? All right, remember, they couldn't just go to Target and buy whatever they needed. They had to get it from their environment, much like the animals that we learned about in Unit 3. You have to get things from your habitat. So California Indians also had to adapt or change to fit new conditions to their environment, all right? And that impacted everything, not just their homes. So we're going to go through 4 different areas and show you a little bit about what they got from their environment to help them survive. First, we're going to start with food, all right? California Indians had to eat what they found around them. Remember, no refrigerators, no In-N-Outs. They had to eat what was close to them. So if you live in the coast, of course, you're eating lots of fish, right? If you're living in the valley, okay, you're probably having a lot of acorns from those oak trees. And if you, this is a picture actually taken in Lake Temescal. If you go hiking up there, you can actually see these huge stones and there's holes in them. And those are from Native Californians grinding out acorns in those so they can make a flour, which would then turn into a bread. And they also have to cook it because if you don't cook it, acorns can be quite poisonous. All right. Well, so that's one way that the coastal Californians and the desert Californians also ate prickly pear cactus. Yum, right? Of course, that cactuses are going to grow in the desert. So these are ways that these natives were able to find food in their region. All right. They also had to make clothes out of what was nearby. So oftentimes they used plants or animal skins to make that clothing. All right. So if you lived in the desert, they have a lot of rabbit skins here. Remember, in the desert, it does get quite hot, but it gets cold at night. There's a lot of rabbits that live in the desert. If you live in the mountain, all right, you're going to be using deer skin, and maybe even the valley too. There's a Hoopa woman who's wearing lots of different types of shells. Shells we'd probably find at the coast region, right? All right, so again, finding things in their environments. We've already talked about the homes a little bit, but let's go back into some more detail here. California Indians also adapted how they live based on their climate, right? So coastal, it's not super hot or super cold here. It's just kind of in between. So here's Pomo. They're using tule grass, right? Tule grass. But if you live in the mountains, it's a little colder. You might need a log cabin, all right? This one's made out of cedar. Makes sense, all right? And then, of course, tools. Every group had tools to adapt to their environment, and they had to, again, make those tools out of what they could find in their environment. So mountains, they had lots of wood, so they were able to make bow and arrow. All right, that's a tool. In the valley, they were able to find obsidian to make spear points so that if they didn't have a bow and arrow, they could throw a spear. In the desert, some of their tools, they could take clay and make these lovely containers or make baskets. And then on the coast, they could take tule grass and make a boat so they could go fish. Or this is also for elk. Make an elk horn so it sounds like elk. You're calling the elk, and then throw your spear and you've got dinner. All right. So the whole point of this lesson is, how did the California Indians use things in their environment to survive? And I think we've just shown quite a few. Pretty cool.